Okay, so to the readings, yes, let me briefly introduce Naush. Naush is an editor and publishing director at Poetry Birmingham Literary Journal. She's a visiting lecturer at Birmingham City University and a trustee now at Poetry London. Her work has appeared or is forthcoming in the TLS, Peer Review, Dark Horse and Magma, and her debut micro-pamphlet box set was published last year by Broken Sleep's Legitimate Snack. And this might also be a good moment, I think, to mention that we're working with Naush on a lovely sequence entitled Litanies, some of which I think she might be reading this evening, and which we're aiming to publish a little bit later in 2021. So Naush, welcome to Guillemot Press, and over to you.
Thank you, Luke, and congratulations firstly to Philip on this beautiful little book. I've got my copy already and have read it today and really enjoyed it. So it's lovely to be able to join you for your launch tonight. And of course, congratulations to Luke and Sarah for another lovely Guillemot production. I'm going to see if I can share my screen for what I'm going to read. And I always like to start with poems by someone else first. And because Philip tweeted something earlier about things that are local and maintaining a sense of, place in terms of where we are physically, whilst we're in this online digital world that we're still inhabiting with Zoom reading. So I thought, why not read Roy Fisher? And I like these little poems by Roy, which are about, they're from a sequence that he has on poetics and poetry, and I liked them for that. So I thought I'd share those and start with this. So this is Roy Fisher and 3 little poems. The first is called Poem. Poem, the small poem, the unit of feeling, pretty red mouth, blotted and asking why. Here is your photograph. It is a square view of the air of things, one certain hour, when just in the background, a green engine goes mad in a tree to the end of time, pretty mouth. This one is called It Is Writing. It is writing. Because it could do it well, the poem wants to glorify suffering. I mistrust it. I mistrust the poem in its hour of success, a thing capable of being tempted by ethics into the wonderful. And the last one. A poem, not a picture. On a ground remarkable for lack of character, sweeps of direction form. It's not possible to determine whether they rise from the ground's qualities or are marked onto it, or whether, if the first, the lines suck the ground's force up, or are its delegates, or, if the second, whether the imposed marks mobilize or defeat it, or both in all cases. Out of a scratch ontology, the sweeps of direction form, and, as if having direction, produce at wide intervals the events. These are wiry nodes made of small intersecting planes, as if rendered by hatching and having a vapid played out look. But they are the nearest the field has to intense features. Each has a little patch of red. So that was Roy Fisher. I hope you enjoyed those as much as I did. That last one there, really interesting in terms of what it sort of says about ekphrastic work, perhaps too, and the idea of painting a landscape. So now I'm going to share a different PDF. And Luke mentioned there that hopefully there will be a little Guillemot book of poems that I've been working on later this year. But as I said to him earlier, I feel like ripping half of that manuscript up and putting new things in it. But that's sometimes how it is with fraught projects. And this one has been quite fraught. It's a sequence of poems that I started back in 2017 when I first decided to take writing seriously. And it began as a task I set myself, that I'm going to respond to these 40 texts. And it's a collection of sayings of the Prophet. So it's from the Islamic canon. And I wanted to write about doubt and dissent and disobedience. And I thought, let me use these as prompts. And I'm a completist, so I did those 40 poems, and then I ripped some of them up and tried again. And then I ripped some of them up and tried again. And so this will probably be the fourth iteration, but some of them have stuck. And it's nice, I suppose, in that process to find out which ones have some weight and which ones have stuck with me. And also, I think what will happen in the end is just completely relinquishing that scaffolding of the original text and responding to it, and something else emerging. So I think that's what's happening, and will hopefully be done by the time the book is due to be published. The one you can see right now, I'm going to read later, but let me start with something that's unrelated to that project. This is Rose Apple and the Desiccated Lake, which was published recently in PN Review. And the title refers to the etymological sort of translation, I suppose, of Jammu and Kashmir, which is where my family come from. And it's a poem of lots of places though. So Rose Apple and the Desiccated Lake. 1. Fractals bloom along the horizon, inky black and skeletal, reaching upward, as if fists have pounded from underground and the earth has shattered the sky. Or I could call them bare trees and tell you to see them as I do, in dusk grey distance, indistinct and fading. Only there are no horizons where I live, and no blue haze of hills or towns, just the immediacy of walls and amputated limbs on narrowing pavements outside chicken shops. There is no distance in Spark Brook, only other corners to turn into cul-de-sacs, and here, in the suburb I've escaped to, a chill. 2. Weeks on, snow is still held by the woodland, ground so saturated that each step I take draws its own foot-shaped puddle up to the surface, pool here around me, my weight too much for the land to hold without spilling forth its water. My presence will cause floods, and I am staying here to drown the city. Let it never be said I took more than I gave. 3. I have taken to driving in the night to remind myself I am safe to move, confined in my containers of breath, hurtling through any darkness, as if it is normal to trust at speed with abandon. I've perched on a hilltop to overlook the lit city and pretend that elevated distance brings epiphany, that silent staring is contemplation, has meaning. Now, with a view from the promontory, I transcend my own estimations, realize I would still rather look through glass than air. 4. Memory is thin, membranous. Something wet is slipping down the walls, the earthy dampness of paint and plaster, a smell that witnesses the negligence of disuse. It was a condition of my insurance policy to visit you every 7 days and pass a tender look over each threshold into every crevice, to watch for any drip that might bring rot. Destruction is small, slow, then sudden and complete. I did not come for months, trusting that the neighboring houses would keep you standing, knowing you had a longer lifespan than me and deeper foundations on this land. 5. Mountain folk do not fear like valley people. I learnt this only when our guide placed the little shell of baby car seat at the very edge of the air, and I stood, trying not to send my breath plunging down with my baby, made pomegranate heart grip granite and pull itself back into my chest from the dark of my stomach. He had a sense of perspective I lacked. It wasn't sheer, just because air was all around it or gave the pleasure of distant vision, But I'm of the valley, and in the valley the deep rises up to meet our toes before it washes over our rooftops. 6. We pray for rainfall, then watch the waters surge and rush the land away from us. O Lord, let the rose apple be quenched, not ripped by the deluge. I think I'll go up to the first poem I had on the screen now, which is from this sequence that I talked about. They were originally numbered because, as I said, it was sort of a call and response or ekphrastic sort of project that I wrote around these 40 texts. So they were all numbered, but I've pulled those out and left them titleless. So they just sit in the manuscript now. So there's no name in front of each. I'll just read them continuously. Slay the messengers, the oracles, the gods and diviners. When their imaginings and dreams, their waking visions turn to words on lips and are proclaimed in the high street, proclaimed on the YouTube video or the Facebook Live, when their gentle entreaties and true aphorisms amplify, become exhortation and warning, calls and commands, slay them. None love human blood so much as the gods. Curse an unborn son to slay his father, blind him for sin. Bid father put blade to his son's throat in burnt sacrifice. This pantheon, niche within niche and non-bloodless. Every myth a mirror, and in every madman a monologue, in every supplicant a longing, in every believer a silence. The gods have needs and their messengers have pulpits. Someone must bleed, something must burn and smoke. Witness, they take no days off. And please, please God and man and mothers, mothers hang themselves or run from hill to hill, a cry, a yell, splintered, rise. I never got to say goodbye to God, raise my cupped hands and ask for one last thing, or with a mud of tears thank him once more. One day I was the beggar at his door, and the next the door was gone, its threshold pulled away into a point, leaving my knuckles knocking but thin air, falling still, falling stupidly. The Earth's magnetic poles switched suddenly, and I, a disoriented dervish, skirts spinning a performance for tourists. I was one anchored, saved by certainties, grateful I never wandered on closed paths, that fear and boundaries kept me from the edge. Now here I am, Lord, Lord. If you had to buy paper for the recording angels, you'd hold your tongue. The states of the friends of God. That's a little bit of text from a Sufi text, I think. And it's about silence. Said nothing at all, W.S. Graham. I've taken honesty away and in its place erected glass barriers to float safely behind. I can say nothing real at all, as if speaking through surfaces will flood my nostrils with saline. I'm the hooded illusionist and you a spectator, watching me fight against my own restraints. Look, by this sleight of hand, I will make you believe I believe. There's a couple of pieces here that again work with different texts and are erasures. I'm going to read this one. There's another one earlier, but this is the one that I feel like reading right now. So, and this is from a text about ritual slaughter of animals. When you kill, kill well. When you slaughter, sharpen everything. In the killing, acquaint oneself with the instrument. Sharpen the time, give the beast ease, cut it dead, offer water, milk, rough while milking, nails milking, knowledge, sleep has made me sleepless. A violent jolt to the head before throats are cut, shatter bones, deafening noise, cursing, the name or not. Contrast that with the beauty of slaughter by children in the open. This is an odd one because it's almost a map of different things. So, and I've not read it before, so it'll be interesting to see what happens and what this sounds like. Overhead, billowing headscarf white as surf, like a curtain, a flag, a noose, a mask, a blanket, a sheet billowing, draped, falling, wrapped, falling, pinned, falling, looped, falling. Dig, run, pile, shape, press and bury, kick and claw and pack tightly into buckets and flood with seawater, collapse with toes and run, shout, laugh and fall, fling still in the water, be buried, be moved, wet, heavy. Touch of air, kiss of breeze on bronzed skin, clumps of sand, cling, sculpted and motionless, but for a sweep of hair, naked and glistening in the sun, in the baked sand by the shoreline, in the salt air of the shoreline, in the sway, tug of the shoreline, still shining, gold, bare, bare. There's an art to looking away, to seeing and unseeing, to knowing and avoiding, to seeing and glimpsing and taking in wholly but refusing to see. Ease in her squareness, confidence in ordinariness, ease in her bareness and skin, in her shortness and joy, in her movement, love in her running, running by the shoreline, running by the sea, embracing a friend, naked, bare, breasts, chair, chest, air. Watch me, watch me, watch you, look at me looking, look at me here too, the other side of that sea. And I think I'm going to read this last one and then give way to Philip. This is a recent one that's hopefully going to replace something and go into this pamphlet, because it's treading the same sort of ground in different ways. So this is the title also in acknowledgement of a bad habit that I have, which is using lots of abstract nouns in poems. But it's very difficult not to when you're talking about abstract things, isn't it? So this tries to grapple with that fact and try to do things with it. So forgive me, my abstract nouns. Forgive me, my abstract nouns. I dared it and made eternal life blur into oblivion, taking my fears with it. Hell dissolved like a nightmare in my head and left the great halls of death pouring into me with fathomless black and no promises. I abandoned the night prayers for sleep without ritual ablutions in freshly clean sheets, masturbating without God watching for the first time or his judgment laying heavy on my chest in the refractory period of guilt, seeking him come morning in springtime woods or the low, voluptuous, low rain clouds and encompassing silence spreads to fill the earth. I listen into it, but nothing speaks. Just the oak leaves crackle underfoot and the starlings in the elms. The thicket is quiet and morning light recedes like hope. Successive endings rush in, Time has folded up into me. I've been thrown by it like a child down a hill, standing up and brushing off grass to find herself a woman, taller and suddenly self-conscious, walking with quiet purpose rather than running aimlessly. Childhood repetition become adult punishment. Hell dissolved like a mint. Now there's day after day after day disappearing and no God in them to hook the carcass of any hope from. What was budding now droops like the daffodil heads, inviting a look up and inside to some horror, some desiccated death. Easy expectation is replaced with the acidic dread of distended stomach. I have swollen into stupor, and when they fast, I sneak morsels into my mouth, gather evidence at my bedside, little foil wrappers crinkling in my fist, blooming in my palm. I tongue hard-boiled sweets and roll them against the flesh of my cheeks. This requires 60 days of expiation. This requires remorse I can no longer muster. Trespass has become rambling on commons. The chicken wire has dissolved. The signage has dissolved. The posts have dissolved, and I am retreating to my bedroom, drawing the curtains and eating alone. I am lying to my family, avoiding temple visits and funerals, saying amen when they make offerings and not meaning it. I'm retching to expel the food they've blessed. I'm giving false witness on pain of being outcast or killed. Hell is filled with bad women and has dissolved. I'm thinking all the things men have told me not to think, and I am not letting them inside my head to hear them, refusing to answer their questions, willing their power to dissolve as it washes over me, as I continue to drown in it like a cigarette stub in a urinal. And when the murmur of litanies fills the evening sky, I expand. My lips make all the shapes they've absorbed into memory, sweet sounds wetting my tongue, the sibilant silking itself like saliva down my throat. Forgive me my indulgences, I whisper. Someone, some God, some spirit, some father, forgive me. Some sheikh, some patriarch, let me be absolved. And let me scoff pig in public. Let me be snouted too and omnivorous, sniffing out and guzzling until reflux constricts my throat. And where's God when I swallow? Where's God when I pray for the faith I need? I'm desperate and less daring, dissolving into oblivion without him. Thank you, everyone. That's me done. And I'm really looking forward to listening to Philip now.
Thank you very much, Naush. That was really interesting to hear you read. I don't think I've heard you read before, actually. And really lovely to see you reading the poems that we're going to be getting stuck into very soon. And interesting to see, I think sometimes there were one or two that you'd already edited a little bit, and so there are slightly different versions in there too, which was nice. Thank you very much. Okay, now let me introduce you. Actually, before I do, don't forget to ask. I've already had Naush had a couple of questions for you already, which we'll come back to a little bit later in sort of direct messages to me. But if you have readings for any of the poets, do please feel free to add them to the chat or send them along, and I will ask them all at the end. So yes, let me introduce you now to Philip Lancaster. So I actually first heard Philip perform. I was thinking about it today in quite a different capacity, because Philip isn't only a poet, but also a composer and a concert singer and a scholar of early 20th century music. And I first saw him at a launch event for Andrew McNeely's Archipelago journal that's fairly recently closed, but was a really impressive and quite influential to Gilmore actually production. And Philip was singing. I believe it was a Ivor Gurney song, but Philip might want to correct me on that. And
Yes,
I think it'd be. Was I right? Oh, good.
Yes.
But it was 12 years ago. I realised. I think it was 2009 or about then. And so Philip is an Ivor Gurney expert and has recently co-edited a 5-volume edition of Gurney's poetical works with Oxford University Press.
It's still going, actually.
Still going, is it?
We've only
Crikey.
published the first one so far.
I think, and that's with Tim Kendall, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. So as a composer as well, Philip's been supported by a scholarship from the Finzi Trust, resulting in War Passion, which is a chamber oratorio, which Philip was invited to complete for the Gloucester Three Choirs Festival. And some people who are familiar to Guillemot, of course, Philip's collaborated with poets John Greening and Ewan Tate, and has recently released a cycle of short piano pieces based on the haiku by Thomas Tranströmer. So the little book we have produced with Philip is Sonata, which is just behind me. Here it is. It's a really lovely little production with cover art by Anna Hussey, who is in the room and deserves congratulations too. It's a beautiful thing. It's double-sided. And it's our first time working with Anna, although we've obviously been aware of her work for quite a while. And the artwork is printed, I always love to mention these little things. It's printed on an innovative paper stock, which is made from the organic waste from grapes generated during the winemaking process. So Philip, congratulations on the book. Welcome to Guillemot as well. And let me hand over to you.
Well, thank you very much. And it's lovely to see Anna. I haven't yet been able to thank her myself for this absolutely beautiful cover. It's endlessly engrossing and fascinating, all the detail on the cover. And it sort of blew me away when I realized that the back cover is actually looking from the inside of the tree, looking outwards through the gap, which is amazing. And thank you to Luke and Sarah too for taking it on and for doing it so beautifully and expressing confidence in my writing. I haven't produced very much poetry, but I have to say it's slightly terrifying to be anybody who writes and creates artistic works probably knows how terrifying it is to send something out into the world. And how it's going to be received. But last May, when I heard that Sarah was reading the poem aloud in the garden to Bodmin Moor, I thought, oh my God! Anyway, and now it's out in the world, and here I am reading it to you. So goodness me. Yes, it's going to be about 20 minutes. I'm going to read the entire thing. I hope you'll bear with me. Although it's in numbered sections, it is a single poem. And the title Sonata is from the Italian sonare, to sound, as opposed to cantare, which is to sing. And it's a name given to many musical works from the late 17th century onwards. And now we get lots of piano sonatas and cello sonatas and violin sonatas. But sonata, in the case of the book, also refers to the form. It is in sonata form, which is the form, the structure of the work that musically, quite often the first movement of these sonatas and symphonies and the like is in. But I have been using verbal ideas rather than musical ones. I don't want to bog you down in a sort of T.S. Eliot litter of textual notes, but a few things might help. Firstly, col legno. The full title is Sonata Violare col legno. Col legno, as any string player will know, is when you play a violin or a cello or viola with the wood of the bow. So rather than just using the horsehair, you using the wood of the bow. Violare, continuing the Italian theme, quite a lot of musical terms are in Italian, is violation. And this refers to, well, it's partly tinnitus, which I deal with in the poem a little. But there's quite a bit of duality in there as well. Staves and staves, musical staves. The 5 lines on which music is written is known as the stave, but also the tree. And the poem read by Naush by Roy Fisher. Actually, I should say, thank you, Naush. Sorry, I haven't heard you read before, and it was wonderful reading it, and wonderfully visual and tangible images in your poetry. I really enjoyed it. Wonderful. Thank you very much. And it's also wonderful to have the ideas of silence and noise occurring, and the listening and the woods, which we'll come to very shortly in my piece. But in the Roy Fisher poems that you started with, ground occurred a couple of times. And ground is another of these dual words. It's the earth on which we walk, but also in musical terms, a ground is also known as a ground bass, or it could be a basso ostinato, a passacaglia, a chaconne, and it's when you have a melody in the bass line which is repeated throughout the entire work, and over that the composer weaves this musical work. But in the Elizabethan times, particularly in keyboard works of Orlando Gibbons and Thomas Tomkins and the like, it was known as a ground. So it's a line that underpins all that goes on above it, just as the earthen ground underpins us, and hourly silence is the ground upon which all sound weaves its noise and its music. And so if you'll excuse me and bear with me, this is Sonata Violare col legno. I have dared to taint, to mar perfection, the harbour of thought, to impose myself on the ground of eternity, to shackle the womb of peace, love, fear, thought, the page marred, purposed, whetted through loss to new unsilence knowing. With the first stroke, the first breath, the seed, the storm breaks, silence breathes, sings. The ink mars, the storm breaks, and the stars do fall and fall as we unmoving circumambulate the pole, our lives but a breath, a wreath of mist beneath the arbour's pall that is lost with the first threads of dawn. A tear-dropped seed dripped into a pool of still earth sets slow waves rippling in air that glacial firm to grains of time, stranded in glass-shorn measures of seasons, of stars, trammelled in harmonious staves, slow crafted music standing sinuous, an ore of days that may be smelted in fire, exhumed as ash, the breath of time-lost loners and lovers captured in rapture of passion, shriven in lithe flame, in living flares of love, in spring's glow and winter's slow burn, the breath of silenced lives beneath the falling stars of time and future time, of lives spent by the light that shrives the wood, of we that mar, that taint the ground, the womb, the nascence of all. Is there silence? Where there is none, there not to hear. The slow eddying staves, harmonious, silent, resound without the firming strands of time, rippling outward into still pools, breaking unsounded upon voiceless ripples in air and earth, of other seeds set close, their songs too beyond their firming strands, their seeded staves, resonant, harmonious staves, slow breaking in silence the ground, breaking, making the precious ground, sensed as the scent of light or sound in still air, lithe, unheard, but lived, strong and living. To sense it is to know how great the dare it is to taint, to mar the ground. To know it is to sense that one might stand or walk awake to the quiet ground, the currents of eddying soundlessness that surround, and be yourself a seed in earth, in air, harmonious, resounding. With the first stroke, the first breath, the seed, the storm breaks and the stars do fall as our lives and breath are lost with the first threads of dawn. Is there silence? But the larching seems dead. Its trunk's face featureless, some fallen. Dead silence mars the peace. No lithe ore of song is here for smelting in heart's furnace, exhuming in breath through time. Its seeds, too densely set, stretch close-sided to the sky, striving, reaching a desperate small rosette of green that attempts to free to light the thin stave set. And yet they neither sound nor break resounding staves between these trunks of stilted time. A barren womb bereft, the larching seems dead. I stand, walk in its midst, unquiet, a breath, lost beneath the arbor's pall and the stars that fall and fall. In that unquiet place, I sense nothing. I cannot feel the still pool breathing. I cannot hear, know the ground. My staves still in the dead silence, stifled. Instinctive, I move to the edgelands and stand on the brink of dawn, of where the light that shrives beyond the wood. Do I dare to try, to feel, to reach? Do I dare to strive? Do I dare? Is there silence where there is none? Despairing, fearful, I unbutton myself, loosen my mask, and withdraw from the world, setting down my clothes, my self-consciousness railing against me as I cautious reveal the free body, opening myself to the air, revealing a million cilia and scenting pores, the whole body an open ear, listening, reaching into the edge of all, keen seeking, skin wrapped, tremulous, fretting, but alive to the slightest breath, hungering for scent and some small sense of that rare ground of silence. Despairing, fearful, I stand, the ear of the unclothed body alive to all. And yet I can but feel the more the oppression of that place. The larching seems dead. I move closer towards the edge of that dead place and stand unclothed amidst the litter, hungering, fearful, looking out upon the dawn, upon the light that shrives, looking out upon the sparse-treed space. I feel close to the edge of song, close to the edge of scenting the ground, of being able to know silence, a place, a space in which to resound, the ear, the body alert, ready to sing. But I cannot touch it. I cannot hear or feel. Do I dare to strive, to taint, to mar the ground? Is there silence? Do I dare to step beyond and set myself a seed that may lie dead in earth, be shriven by light fallen in a glimmer of falling stars? Do I dare to step free into the lonely grassland and set in earth a tentative seed, an uncertain sapling in our dusk's darkening woodcut? Is there? To seek to set first celandine and stand aloft, reaching into silence, drawing new ground from and for eternity, giving, bearing breath that might bronze to ore in the grains of time and future time. Do I dare? But I do not dare. I do not dare set foot beyond the larching, the dead silence, defeated. I sit near its edge, feeling for the edge of beyond, for the ground beneath, for the grains of time, the measures of where and what I am, and feel my staves press hopeless into the oppression of that dead place. I do not dare but clothe myself in silence unsensed, yet somehow known. The ear, the body lithe with hope, not knowing how, perhaps, to hear. I clothe myself in silence and retreat into the world, the larching bereft, the dead silence. Was this the first weaving of this dark loom of bones, the tying in of the first grey thread in black? Was this, unbeknown, the firming of the first strand in air, in earth, the first stroke, the first breath that broke the storm of ink that mars and taints the ground new purposed, the tying in of the first thread of dream? Days, seasons, measured by staves of night, of dark, do pass, and stars do fall and fall the grains of time. Days, seasons, measured by trammelling staves of dark, that shrive the days of all that mars, that taints the earth and air. In the gathering dusk of each spent day, the ground's seed sets slow waves rippling through still earth that breathes voluptuous air into shriving night, rising, encroaching on places it cannot know by day, now shadowed, dark, the ground foresting. In the dark forest, feared and driven out except for sleep, with the door of night ajar, if left unbound by specious light, the ear, as the eye, accustoms to the night, slow undamping, an oppressed sense of the womb, the ground that reaches in noiseless roar, bearing the self, reborn in a refuge of thought that it took too long to learn. With the gloaming, a new sense of sound dawns, and I can hearing see the clouds fall beneath the falling stars. Drops of rain dripped into a pool of earth unfurl themselves upon the ground. A breath, a footpad's press, a wing's soft beat, the grains and seeds of time shorn and stretching out of time. To sit, to lie at peace, is to hear near eternity. Is this silence? But perhaps I start to listen too deep, to reach too close to the precious ground, which begins to bore deep into mind and ear in long tones, steady or stuttering, high C's and rising third, the fourth, the fifth harmonics of Earth's revolution. It waxes, wanes, whirs and turns, shifting, gathering itself, firming unsounded except in mind. Encroaching unsound, the ground shadowed imperturbable, and chance of silence shatters, is lost in inescapable noise, unbroken, unbidden. Despairing, I return to the larching. I return to the edge where once I did not dare. I return to where dead silence marred the peace, to where no awe of song, of ground, guessed was found or felt. But now the staves burn with a century's babble and breath, fierce exhumed in a dark wind of noise. I gentle brush a single stave, and noise flares from the trunk, crashing upon me, splintering, screeching. Again, again, a crushing kaleidoscope of noise. I blow lightly, lightly upon the reeds of hope, and they break upon me, exploding, bludgeoning the ear. I cannot bear the ear to hear but haul cloth on cloth, closing, seeking to smother the craving cilia, gaping pores. Shuddering, weeping, crushed by the weight of sound and shame, despairing, fearful of silence, of sound, I stand amidst the litter of maimed memory, hopeless, broken. Broken the womb with wound of sound, and I, broken, I am broken with agony of sound, of music, broken. Silence? There is no escape. There is no way. There, it is there, it is there. There can be no hope of silence, but the need to try to learn, to listen anew. In this wild cacophony of sound, I must content myself with mere memorial of imagined ground, the memory of hope seen in the womb of a page, the page I dare to mar, to taint, and set within this storm of ink, a seed, a stave, a ring of words that mires the page's ground, purposed through loss, a new unsilence growing. I have dared, and yet, once marred, this page and I will lie stranded in time, reclothed in silence, awaiting a lithe ear to exhume its ore, unclothe its slow staves, set its tear-dropped seed deep in their earth, rippling, eddying, setting poor celandines, rough saplings in body and breath, while I retreat to find new ways of hope, new purposes for breath and being. The stars will fall, and fall the grains of time. And I, who marred, more failed than found, shall rasp and breaking be no more. The threads of light do pierce the gloom, and shrive the wood of we that mar. And with the last breath, silence breaks as the dawn upon our ending. Thank you.
Gosh, that was terrific. Thank you, Philip. There's digital applause coming your way.
Thank you.
We have, as I'm sure there'll be a couple more questions and comments on their way. We have had a couple in already. And yeah, we've got some nice comments coming in, Philip, now. We had some nice ones, Naush, to start immediately after yours. I don't know if you've got to pick them up or not. From Isabel saying powerful and beautiful, and Suna saying mesmerizing. Eleanor Reese, wow, I love these poems. Never liked the last one especially. And I did get, now, yeah, we've got some coming in now, Philip, as well, from Isabel and Sarah and Elzbieta. Thank you for this forceful forward movement, not marred. Richard Capen, great readings both. And Lucy, beautiful, congratulations, Philip. Jane, wonderful to hear you read this. And Naush, that was a brilliant reading. Rose Ferraby, we mentioned earlier, one of our artists, beautiful, resounding sense of age and depth in there, Philip. They reminded me somehow of Anglo-Saxon poetry. And thank you both from William Wooden. There's a question that I think will go, or a couple of questions. I've got, yeah, we'll start with one for both of you, actually. Philip, I think you touched on it a tiny bit, but maybe we'll start with Naush on it. Can you both say a little bit about the significance of silence in your work, religious, musical, poetic, etc.? If we start with, is that all right, Naush, or do you need time?
No, that's fine. And it was something that I was thinking about as I was reading Philip's book earlier today, and just thinking about silence. Gosh, what do you say? The pamphlet that is hopefully going to come out with Gilmot later this year. Originally, it was called Things I Can't Say, and a lot of it was about silence, and silence in the sense of things that are difficult to articulate, dangerous to articulate, that need a particular audience, that are hard to put in, the linear format, which even when, something is on a page and it has a shape, the way that we sort of verbalize and say things gives it a certain logic, and a certain linearity in it. It's difficult to incorporate texture and uncertainty and confusion and the cacophony of sound really into that. So there's huge tension around all of that. So yeah, it's one of those issues that there's not a straight answer to this question, apart from to say that yes, silence is really significant, and how things are articulated is significant, and what's not said is as important, and is speaking as much as what's said on the page, I suppose.
Philip, have you got anything to
well, for me as a composer, I find it's very easy to write lots of notes, but actually the greatest power, I think, comes from those moments of silence within works. And it's sound exists in the space of silence, as I said, and to be able to focus that attention onto silence by bringing it into the formal structure of music when you are listening is such a powerful thing. Nowadays, I do worry that I think we're all living in films. People need a soundtrack to their lives. They're always having headphones, and on the train, you go on trains at the moment, but it was always somebody playing music. It's like they have to have a soundtrack to their lives, like they're in some sort of movie. And it disturbs me rather, because you're missing so much. I think actually part of it is people are afraid of thinking, and sound distracts from thinking. But so I try to bring something of that into my work always. It's also a precious commodity. I've got 4 children, and so silence is something you rarely get in this household.
Naush, there was another one came in. We've got quite a few questions coming now, which is good. About relationship with God in the text. So a light one. There's a sense of faith and doubt. Where does the text determine its balance between the two?
It doesn't, is the answer to that. I suppose it sort of hovers around these things, and they hover under the text and in the text, and it's something that's sort of explored because that's the nature of doubt, I suppose, in that nothing is sure. So even in the text, it's unsure, and it explores it in various ways, and it just sort of hovers there, I suppose, and is held in the text. So a lot of it is thinking about not faith, but also the social aspects of religion, and navigating those with doubt and with dissent, and so it's there, and again it's another one of those things that's just sort of unclear and left sort of open in the text, I think.
Thank you. I've got another one, the last one I think on the direct messages is for Philip, which is, has Gurney's poetry influenced yours, and if so, how?
I don't think so. Well, it's very difficult to be able to discern influences, I think, and particularly when I've been working on Gurney for 20 years almost, and I've read everything he's written, all of his poetry. I think that there's one word I've taken from him, which is, by the way, that's in another poem entirely. I think possibly it has just given me the confidence to pursue my own work, really, because I didn't write anything for 15 years and then decided I need to reclaim this and do something of my own. So it's him that has given me that confidence.
Well, I've got you there, Philip. I'll ask the one from Rose, which is a question for Philip. I'm really interested in your writing process. Do you find that when composing music, poems find themselves forming and vice versa?
No. I find two very different, very separate processes. In fact, if I'm writing music, I can't write words. I go so deeply into one side that I can't move across to the other. So it's odd, really, how they don't. I mean, the music informs the poetry quite a lot, but I'm not sure how much the certainly not my own poetry. I mean, I do work a lot with other poets in my composing, but I don't think my own poetry moves into the music.
Naush, we've got two coming for you, I think. Going back to Eleanor Reese's question, I'd be interested to hear more about the tension around working with abstract nouns. I have a similar regular struggle between naming and enacting.
I think it goes back to that whole show not tell sort of dichotomy, doesn't it, of a lot of the things that we write about, we can talk about in terms of, they're about this big abstract thing that human beings are concerned with and think about, and it might be loss, it might be love, it might be music, whatever it might be. It's these big abstract things that we're dealing with, and in a poem actually referring to them directly is difficult. And it has, I do think it has, sometimes it has this effect, at least I've found in my work, of diffusing the language and the word itself. And so it's something that I've struggled with when trying to write this sequence, which is around religion and spirituality and all of those sorts of things, because a lot of the religious texts that I was working with were very abstract in their language, and a lot of what I was trying to do was sort of look at and I can see that second question which sort of comes into it, why 40. I just happened to pick this text called the 40 Hadith of Imam Nawawi. It's a really foundational sort of text of sayings of the Prophet, and so it's really wide ranging in terms of its subject matter. There's all sorts of subjects covered in it, from really practical things about life and living to more aphoristic sort of sayings that are very sort of abstract in their language. And then so to work with a text like that, it was actually quite difficult, because it's so broad that it works as its own text, but as poems in response to it, or texts that are in somehow take them as prompts, it's difficult to find that thread that stretches through all 40. And then it's also difficult to sort of incorporate those big abstract ideas and concepts into something that works as a poem. And for me, what works as a poem is something that has a genuine force and feeling to it, that has that kind of sonic impact and an aural effect around the language, but also has something concrete. So I guess there's just this forceful voice or feeling behind it, and it impacts you in that certain way. And so that's what works for me in terms of canonical poetry and the old forms, and even contemporary poetry. That's what I kind of look for. And then when I wasn't seeing that in what I was writing or how I was responding to it, to me that's not working, and that's a problem. So it was something to grapple with and struggle with and try to sort of transmute and transform these abstract words and this abstract language into something that works as a poem. And it's an ongoing process.
Thank you. Had a couple of comments coming in that I think I might have missed. I like Eleanor Reese's on Phillips. Thank you, a strong performance. I was kept hearing bunting, pre-flats maybe. Karen and Pam, silence is so elusive today. Philip's poem is word painting we can read in our own silence. And a nice one from Bruce. Thank you, Philip. I decided to not read Sonata in advance of you reading it. I'm glad I resisted, as your reading was effective and will guide my future reading. So thank you. And so I think
there are more than that one reading. There's several readings within it that you can make. So do explore more deeply. But yes, thank you.
Yeah, free to read now. And I think Philip, you've answered Nevin's question about the Gurney poetry and how much it's influenced your approach to Sonata. And there is one from Elzbieta, which is question to Philip. Apart from string instruments, you mentioned in your introduction, what other instruments can you hear in this text?
The words are the instruments. The musical allusions, the instruments. It's really, it's the technique. It's the col legno. It's the woods which were the starting point. So it's the woodland which is the instrument, more than the stringed instruments. And so it's the woodland and the words. They are the vehicle, the performer, the instrument in that.
Thank you very much. Thank you for all of those questions. That was a really good little sequence of questions coming in there. I think we've managed to get through all of them as well. I think I've mentioned all the lovely comments that you've been posting too. Thank you very much, Sarah. Oh, can I ask Anna? Oh, here we go. Anna Hussey didn't expect to be here answering questions. Are you willing to answer?
Yes. Yes.
Hi, Anna.
Hi.
Welcome, Anna Hussey. Just to remind people, the cover art for Sonata, which is absolutely beautiful, and it's lovely working with you at last. So can I ask Anna to tell us a little about her visual work on Sonata?
Sure. First of all, can I just thank both of our readers for, I've really enjoyed it, and I think you're both brilliant and you gave wonderful performances. So it's been great to be a part of it. And yeah, lovely to hear the book in full as well. I didn't have a chance to talk to Philip about it, so I was kind of going off what I was, my first impression of reading it. And the thing that really struck me when I was reading it was, firstly, the sort of sense of the repetition and the rhythm of it, and the kind of textures that it creates through it, and obviously the sense of woodland. So I wanted it to be something about wood, but I was also really struck by this idea of marring, and that's something I'm quite interested in my work, the idea of marring the page by drawing, like drawing being a sort of semi-destructive act. So, and I also love this negative space within some of the poetry, the way that sort of you get these cracks appearing within them. So that made me think of the cracks that you get in wood. And so obviously what I've done is something quite like directly drawing from a gnarly wooded surface. I used reference images from a sort of hollowed out tree. And the idea is that, yeah, you've got the negative space on both sides. So you've got the inside of the bark on the inside cover and the outside on the outside.
It is
Thank you very
perfect.
much.
I have to say it is perfect for that, because so much of it, you know, the speaker is the tree and is trying to send out from this stave, this trunk of themselves into the world. So to be inside it, for the poem to be inside it, is wonderful. It really is. Thank you.
Oh, I'm so glad you like it. That's the most important thing.
Thank you, Ada. That was putting you on the spot a little bit there.
That's all right.
We didn't brace you for answering questions, so thank you very much. And you're getting lots of lovely comments in the chat there as well, from Rose. The cover's beautiful, and Philip, obviously the cover's amazing, and Naush, it works so beautifully. I know the inner covers and outer. So thank you very much, and thank you everyone. That's all we've got time for tonight, I think. So please thank again Naush and Philip and